Hello, and welcome again to another episode of 5 Plain Questions, a podcast that proposes 5 questions to indigenous artists, creators, musicians, writers, movers and shakers, and culture bearers, people in the community doing great things for our community. I'm Joe Williams, your host for this conversation. My goal is to showcase these amazing people in our indigenous communities from around the region and country. I want to introduce you to Keith Secola. Keith is considered to have one of the greatest contemporary Native American songs in the 20th and 21st century. NDN Kars was thrown into the lexicon with his hit song from the 1994 film Come Dance With Me Outside. But this was the result of nearly 20 years of performing and touring. Born in Cook, Minnesota in 1957, Secola is a singer-songwriter and producer for countless genres of music. He is an award-winning performer and continues to tour with his band. Born in Cook, Minnesota in 1957, Secola is a singer-songwriter. He produces for countless genres of music. He is an award-winning performer and continues to tour with his band, performing over 150 shows a year. This man is busy. So let's jump into this conversation with the one and only Keith Secola. Keith Secola, thank you so much for joining me on 5 Plain Questions. It's really great to have you here, and it's really an honor to have you on this podcast.
It's good to be here, and good to be with all the listeners as well.
Would you be able to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and where you're from, and what it is that you do.
Well, my name is Keith Melvin Secola is my middle name, Melvin. Kind of an old writer's name. But that's kind of what I am, like I've been singing and songwriting. And I'm from northern Minnesota. I grew up on a place called the Iron Range of northern Minnesota. It's a mining area, iron ore mining, about 90 miles south of the Canadian border. There's a big ridge called the Laurentian Mountains and the Laurentian Divide, where a drop of water, if you drop a drop of water on this particular place, 1/3 will go down to Mississippi, 1/3 will go out to the St. Lawrence Seaway, and the other third will go up to the Hudson Bay. And so it's kind of like what's happened to me as well, where I've spread and proliferated all over this Turtle Island. And so I'm coming from you in Tempe, Arizona, where I migrated down to a number of years. I met my wife at the University of Colorado, and she lived down here with her family, which is from the Ute Native tribe from Fort Duchesne, Utah. And so they relocated in Arizona. And so that's eventually how I got down here to the desert Southwest. I make my home in a college town called Tempe, Arizona. And I play regionally, but also play nationally and throughout, and I've done some tours in Europe and things like that. And it seems like I'm writing constantly in my career, writing songs, getting ideas. And it seems like the songwriting is like 2 parts, the song catching, much like a dream catcher where you catch dreams, good dreams, and song catching is like that. You catch the songs, and maybe if it sticks, you kind of work on writing them and playing. And so I've done that, and I've recorded both at home in my home studio and in studios across Turtle Island. And I play guitar primarily. I write on that, but I've written songs on piano, and I play the native flute, a little bit of banjo and mandolin and the string instruments. But guitar has been my little brother of the drum, as I call it. I call it the little brother of the drum. I think it is a very percussive instrument and very tied in with how the drum has been brought to our people. It's just another form of it.
Early on, we have a lot of influences in our life. And as we grow older and move through our life, those influences change and different things influence us. Would you be able to talk about your biggest influences, both early on and today?
Well, I think being around different types of music, like our family would attend some powwows, and I would hear that kind of drum music and some songs that were just made up by my elders and people that I knew would always sing songs, and you heard versions of them, sometimes just fun things and nonsensical things. That was very influenced on me, make me very spontaneous as far as an approach to music. And then you started listening to radio music, music on the radio. On the Iron Range, that's about all you could get was music on the radio, not too many music stores or things like that, although there were and are. So you start listening to the pop music, like the Beatles and the Stones, and, heavily influenced by the guitar playing in the Rolling Stones and things like that. I remember listening to David Bowie's album, Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars, and I like that format of a rock opera kind of thing, and the songwriting on there and the sounds. And that was a very influential album on what I do today. And then I played a marching instrument when I was in grade school. I started playing trombone like in fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, and I played all the way up to high school. And so marching band and band programs in schools are so important. Not so much that you become a professional trombonist or a professional percussionist or a flautist or anything like that, but how music influences you and keeps it vital, keeps it part of your life. And so I would say having that in my life was important, but also having a very inspirational band director. I still remember him to this day, who inspired me to play. And even to this day, I remember one time playing it's a B flat on the trombone. It's one of the lowest instruments. It's very stretched out there in the seventh position, but playing it with a lot of bravado and loud, reading it off the sheet music, not knowing if I was correct or not. But it didn't matter to me because I played it all it said, play it bold. And I did. And, I was the only performer in the band playing that note. And the conductor really liked that. Like wasn't shy about it. I just played. It is kind of how you got to approach music. A lot of our people are shy, but when you come to music, you have to be provocative and be bravado and be out there. And so I think that had a real positive influence on my music today. When I was a senior in high school that summer, it was 1975, and I saved up all my money painting houses in northern Minnesota, a little town called Virginia, Minnesota. My father was a house painter, so I learned how to do trim work really good, and painting around windows and next to glass and things like that. But I saved up all my money. I got about $500. I saved up, and I hitchhiked to the nearest town. It was called Hibbing, Minnesota, where Bob Dylan is from. And I marched into the music store, and I slapped down 300 for a my guitar Marauder. It's called Gibson Marauder. They don't make them no more. It's kind of like a cheaper Les Paul version. Um, and I bought that guitar, and I bought a little Vibro Champ amp, and I didn't really know notes or anything or playing, but I bought it. One yeah, backtracking a little bit. My mother used to buy occasionally a Remington guitar. And so, we had a couple of them around our house growing up. And after about a year, a six-string guitar would become a five-string. And after 2 years, a four-string, three-string after 3 years. And no one really knew how to replace the strings or even that you could. So I kind of adapted, and playing little riffs on the guitar, but knowing that I like the feeling of the guitar in my hand. And even today, I have a song called King by Now, where I wrote it on the guitar with only using two strings. And I play it live like that too, in honor of the matriarch of our families, our native mothers and grandmothers and that, who think and want to enrich their children's life by doing whatever they can. And getting by on what you got. And so to me, those are some very, very big influences.
Thinking back to that time, what do you recall the first record that you purchased?
I don't know if we purchased them or so much, we were little thieves and things like that. And don't really remember, it was probably something, like you get to record club and things like that. Probably something by the Beatles. I remember getting Help when it came out in a movie, and also you could see the 45 there. So that could have been it.
Hmm. There's another podcast that I listened to called Record Store Day with my friend Paul Meyer, and it's a brilliant because they interview musicians, and that's one of his questions is about the sort of the adventure of going to the record store and finding music.
That was always an adventure, and what a great, great marvel that is. Like, and also the music stores were partly they would have some kinds of music, maybe some guitars and then maybe some LPs and things like that. So it was a hybrid music store and record store, could read charts and catalogs by artists and things like that. And so that was so encouraging. And a record store, I remember going into one in Fort Francis, Ontario, and seeing all the records. Like I remember my aunt got me the album Let It Bleed for Christmas, and that was such a gift. And all the songs are on there. I can still remember them.
Oh, that's a great album.
Or Static Majesty's Request by the Rolling Stones, where it was a holograph picture on the album cover. That was magical.
And just the album cover for both of those, so provocative.
Yeah. And I remember, on that album cover were little pictures of the Beatles as flowers, in the very, not in the front ground, kind of in the background, but that kind of magic that was around them.
What a time for music. And I mean, I could talk about album cover art. That's a whole genre in itself.
Yeah, that is. It's really wonderful. And I do have a vinyl release now. It's a Circle. It was a 25-year edition, special edition put out. And so people, in fact, I just seen on Instagram today, a friend was getting his albums out of his catalog, and he kind of pulled that out and put it on there, and it's on Instagram. It's getting likes and things like that. So that was very influential as well.
Oh, nice. We'll later on we'll talk about that album, and we'll put a link in the show notes where the listener can check that out. So let's talk about your career. How have you developed your career, both in college and then post college?
Well, I think in college you kind of you're running along, parallel with a career, and you can't really dive into it yet. But what helped me a lot was I played in a band that we're called the Schwartz Brothers back then, and we're kind of a rock and roll band, and then we're called the Dog Soldiers. But it was always, we were always playing. We had a great female singer, Sharon Robot and Boyer, who still sings, but she could really sing the blues. And we had a great guitarist, Dan Boyer, who could really play. And then the rest of us were like sacred clowns, Tim Wright on bass and Steve Marnetti on guitar, Art Iverson on keyboards. It was kind of a big band, John Metz on guitar, me on guitar. And I played harmonica in the early days too. I played blues harp in the band. And that was when I was in college. And so, I'd go home on weekends and play a gig, and in the summer times, I'd go canoeing in the boundary waters of northern Minnesota a lot. And I'd come home on the weekends and we'd play a gig. But we'd always have fun playing it, always. I think people liked us because we were kind of a band of misfits and kind of like a circus going on up there. And so we generated a following and things like that. And so it just kind of evolved from there. And I think playing in a rock band early on is a really great experience for musicians, and that's a lot of how musicians get their start. I know a lot of artists are solo artists, pretty much what I do today. You could look at them and they all pretty much have band origins.
With the school band, the college band, did did you all disband after you left school, or how did that?
Kind of did, like you evolve, and I moved out west, and the band kind of did this and that, and we still play as adults. It's fun, like to have musician friends that are still around and you can still make music with them. And bands can get hard feelings or anything like that, but after a while life teaches you to let go of them things and keep moving forward, and music is the way to move forward. And and so for me that was very much part of who I am and what I do today.
After you left school, you went to the University of Minnesota, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Is it Minneapolis or Duluth or?
Minneapolis campus.
Okay, okay. So you left there, was it the early '80s?
And even then, like taking Anishinaabe language classes or Jibwemo, learning it, they offered it at the University of Minnesota, which is very new and ahead of its time. They had actually an Indian program, a Native American Studies program, and a department where you had several professors in that department, and language became very much part of the core of the native language departments. They had Lakota language and they had Anishinaabe language, both offered, and you can't even see that today.
Yeah, their language program is pretty strong out there, which is
Yeah.
it's really great to see the strong community there. So from the early '80s until your first album, Circle, was released in 1992, what did those years look like for you? What brought you to the place where you released your first album?
Well, you're always trying, you always think. I remember like I wrote Indian Cars when I was still in Virginia, Minnesota, probably the early 80s. And it just kind of, you write it, and then it takes about 10 years to start unfolding it, get experiences, run into some musicians who know how to play like 49 music on guitars, like little different 49 riffs of powwow singing, not powwow, but like an offshoot of powwow singing, like the 49 and social songs. And so I was kind of experiencing that, experiencing, well, I would like to continue with this music thing. And I think it was in '88 or around in the early '90s. I asked a few friends of mine. I put together like a fundraising idea. Like help me get into the studio. I got a couple songs I would like to record, and Indian Cars was one of them. I recorded with a Sand Creek band from Wyoming, East Wyoming, a Arapaho band, and they taught me a lot. The guitar players, Eugene, and brothers, bass players, and drums, and we were a native band kind of thing, and we had a little bit of fun playing our music. And I brought them down to a studio down in Tempe, and we recorded Indian Cars, and we recorded a couple of their songs, part of what I did for it in exchange for them playing on my song. We recorded a few of their songs original. And that was very important. The word original, start writing songs right off the top. In my early bands, we were always playing original music as well as cover tunes. You got to do that in the sense of we want to survive a little bit. That was really important to always get that originality into your songs, so that you realize that songs aren't just the songs you hear on the radio or with big promotion, but music is everywhere. It's very organic. How they teach people to eat better these days, eat less processed foods and eat cleaner. The same thing with music too. You got to apply that in your life, listen to organic music, listen to tribal music, listen to the birds sing, listen to the wind blow, the river roll, the stream, all that is music too. And listen to acoustic guitar, like someone just playing and singing music. If you're, around that, it's a magical thing. It's like alchemy or something like that. You take your breath and you exhale it into something else. It's mysticism. And I think that was very much my approach to playing music, is that mystic kind of approach to playing and making it your own.
Some of which what comes to mind when you're describing this is the skills of Ringo Starr, where he plays to the music, right? Technically, he's not the most outrageous percussionist drummer, but he understands what the song is and he plays to the song. And it just feels like what you're describing is being in tune to your surroundings and putting something together in that way and having that appreciation for it.
Ringo's inspirational too, and he's a left-handed drummer too. And people don't realize that. Maybe that was what gave him his uniqueness, like he'd approach it left-handed kind of thing. And I always drum too. I kind of have a drum set, and until I switched it around and to be a left-handed drummer, I can drum a lot better left-handed because I am left-handed. Even though people say you play guitar right-handed, I actually disagree. I kind of think the left hand, the chording hand, is more important. Maybe after a while, the picking finger gets really important too, but the left hand is pretty dominant in a right-handed guitar player's world.
Yep. Yeah.
And so Regal Starr was that, and he would apply his music, his drumming to, just listen to it. It's fantastic.
It is. I mean, everyone, drummers go back to him, as their source. And while, of course, there are incredibly bombastic, amazing drummers out there,
early on, like Keith Mood and drummers from Led Zeppelin and people like that,
John Bonham, yeah. So in 94, the film Dance Me Outside had come out, and your song exploded everywhere. And how did you get associated with that production? What led you to that place?
I think, I can't remember the director's name, Brian. I would look it up now. They had heard my music, and
Bruce
I
McDowell?
put it out there. I had put it out there, and I think Keeley radio station was one of the instrumental radio stations that got that music out there. And it's still standing today. I was just out there a month ago in October, went up there for an interview. And my friend Russ Fier, he was a lawyer for the Lakota tribe. He brought it to Keeley and he said, as soon as he's going down that dirt road from the radio station, he heard it on the air, and kind of became an underground hit for a while, like, oh, this belongs to us. This is our native music. This is the forming of our genre. Getting key songs that are part of that genre that can be played at weddings or at get-togethers, at an Indian bar or party or something like that. And that was fit that genre. And so it exploded, became an underground hit. It came from our people. It wasn't like someone who said, here it is. It kind of came from the dirt, and it rose, and songs will do that if people like them, and I learned that if you want to be an important songwriter, write songs important to the people. And that song was important to the people, so it made me more vital as a songwriter for our culture as well.
It's a contemporary song that sings to a lot of us what we go through, what we understand, And
yeah, and I think one of the key lines are, I got a sticker says Indian Power. I stuck it on my bumper. It holds my car together. I think there is some kind of a spiritual thing there in that lyric. Realizes, that economic deprivation that we may face doesn't make us any less or any more, but it keeps us surviving. And I think that sticker, it keeps us the Indian power. We do have power.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's humor in it too, which is something that we all have, to keep us moving forward. Given
Yeah, I think too, like when you talk about singing and songwriting, humor is one of the highest forms of mental taxonomy of thinking, like of extrapolating a thought to a humor. You have to think deeper, you have to think more. And humor is using all of the wit of experience and intuition and things like that. And so sometimes you can kind of just kick them in the shins with truth, but sometimes you can be a Pied Piper and let them follow you. Let people create their own meaningful dialogue and monologue.
So you've over the years, you've released, I think it's 8 releases, 7 albums, and before the recording here, you had mentioned that you're currently working on a new album, and I don't want to get I don't want to fixate on just one song, even though it's one that immediately everyone recognizes and goes to. But what in the years that you've been recording, and things certainly changed after that experience, what's an album that you've done or an experience that you've had that really stands out and sticks with you?
There's a few of them, I recorded here in Tempe. I think this Finger Monkey album was fun because we did it up at a studio in Minneapolis, and we had a little distribution with it, and we had some great engineers work on the album, and just the experience of getting into that studio where some hits were made, like using the drum set that was old. Or I remember playing out at Mad Dog Studios in LA, and like Lucinda Williams and Tom Petty worked in there and things like that. And then recording out in Venice Beach with John Densmore, now the same studio that we recorded in, Willie Nelson records in, and another one of Daniel N. Law and people like that do it. And so some of them albums have that magic. But I remember Finger Monkey sticking out like that, being a lot of fun to record with a rock band. Seems like all the music too gets easier, and when you record it, it should be like that, say, well, this is pretty easy. You don't have to like grind, and you don't have the luxury to do 17, 20 takes on the song, try to get the magic in 2 or 3 or even less. And so some of that recording, like this summer, I set up in a barn in upstate New York and we recorded a small LP, like 7 songs in a couple of days. And just with the equipment that's available now, you can port it, you can bring a studio anywhere.
Oh, as a podcaster, I fully understand that.
Yeah.
The quality of the equipment is so much more fun.
Magical, because I think too, like I've done field recordings too. One thing I've been doing, in all my travels, I've done recordings with artists and recorded them like on my garage band on my Apple computer laptop, and just get a good interface with a good low impedance mic and things like that. And you're off, you're off in the races.
That's a great program that comes, yeah, that's a Mac. And the first season of this podcast was used that. And I've talked to a couple of my podcast friends who are nationally well-known podcasters. That's the software they use. So yeah,
that's fun. Hey, and I noticed too, like I know we're doing this by phone and things, but if you were around there, we could set up, with your garage band and a good interface, or we could use mine, in my home studio. And it gives the participants, a feeling of, oh yeah, I'm have a microphone in front of me. It make it feel good.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, I a couple of years ago I recorded a younger group out of Flandreau, South Dakota, And we set up in their house, and then they did a 4 song set, and we set up. It was great. It was absolutely great.
Yeah, I love that. And I actually encourage our songwriters to use that. I call it making audio sketches, like make an audio sketch like an artist would do on a notepad or something like that. Same thing using GarageBand. You can get a good couple good tracks. If you want something more, maybe you'd have to go into a big studio. But you can even record drums, pre-recorded drums, or with a couple mics you could record live. Just having voice and maybe doing some overdubs on that and the guitar and some overdubs. You don't need much. And so it really also liberates you too, like as in it makes you more prolific to be able to do that.
When early on in the career, and those evolve over time. Can you talk about how opportunities have presented themselves to you, or how you've pursued them?
Like just playing at some big music festivals early on in the career. Like I played at the Roskilde Festival out in Denmark and was able to bring up, a handful of other native performers and just hanging around with like Kurt Cobain and people like that from Nirvana and meeting Patti Smith and Neil Young out there and things. Those kind of opportunities are golden, and then you pursue your own music too, and realizing that you really got to do your thing, and so you become part of it. Like instead of asking the creator to be in your heart, you ask the creator to be in the heart of creation, and and that enables a person's view. Like I'm part of this big circle, I'm part of this beautiful circle. And so I think that's how you pursue it, as being part, and and, and enjoying it. And then the native scene, like musicians like Floyd Westerman was very influential to me, partly because when we first started playing, is the way I played music, I'd follow him. I wouldn't try to, say, no, this got to be this way. I'd say, okay, Floyd, if you want to come in on 3, I'll follow you instead of 1. And I've met musicians that are old, and also a comedian like Charlie Hill, like the great native comedian Charlie Hill was very influential. Lolly Vegas from Redbone showed me how to play Come and Get Your Love on guitar. And so those kind of things are golden and always stick with you. I became friends with you too in the 90s, like in 93, 94 or something like that. And I still remain friends with them now. And so that circle comes around. I remember meeting Jerry Garcia, and Jerry told me, he says in his language, he goes, hey, Keith, man, you got good music, and good music in America falls through the cracks, and that's what happened here. The music falls through the cracks, but keep doing it. It was very inspiring to hear that, and he heard my songs and had the Grateful Dead played over their loudspeakers before some of their shows, and in the mid '90s, '94. 90, before Ernie passed. And so that was very important as well. And I think that kind of stuff, um, it inspires you, but it also gets you wanting to make better, like I remember hearing my songs when I went to a Grateful Dead show down here, and I was thinking to myself, oh, I wish I could have mastered that album, you know, and so like that's inspirational, but at the same time realizing that more work needs to be done.
Your work isn't just within music. You do have some advocacy that you've been part of too over the years. Would you be able to talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, like I'm not so much like this is my cause or anything. I kind of float with what's important, what's going on with the native people, and like our indigenous struggles that we've had, from land struggles to water struggles to missing and murdered. It's all been part of the landscape of who you are as a singer songwriter in the native world. And I think you have to you have to open your heart up, and you have to open your emotions and be part of this struggle. I've done shows in the Black Hills, like to save the Black Hills and bring awareness and things like that to the tribes. That I've done shows for the homeless, and very much even today, I try to be very in tune with it locally, even what happens, and doing more than just doing shows, but being a kind person and being aware of our struggles. I think those have been very close to my heart. Like I think in Native world, we have a lot, especially like with the boarding schools. I remember I put the song out, Say Your Name, over 10 years ago before, the found out graves and things like that. The struggle of parochial schools and the real Indian Relocation Act and things like that. There are real things, the real things that happened. And you listen to them things and you become part of it, like I think those are, so many of things and the causes. And no, I think our native children are so important, our grandchildren and the young children that are coming up are so dear and important. And even in my own children, learning how to be a better father, a better grandfather, a better uncle. Um, and with a younger generation of young native women that are coming up are so strong. They're like our nephews were strong like that, but our relationship to them are like that, even though they're our nieces. They're strong. I'm just talking about gender roles and things like that, but there really isn't, that strongness that is out there, and learning how to work with them and be respectful and also inspiring too. Those causes are very dear to my heart.
Well, I think what's great is the work that you do and a number of other Native and indigenous bands that are out there is that they're able to articulate the things that we all feel and experience from our reservations and our communities. And it really means something that when we hear something that we can connect with, we don't feel so alone.
Well, I remember a few years back they were having water struggles along the Mississippi in northern Mississippi, and we did a concert with the Indigo Girls, and who have always been part of the indigenous struggle. And we had to go out on and play on a pontoon out in the middle of the Mississippi River, so that the officers couldn't arrest us. And so those kind of things are important and very much still ongoing too. It's not over by any means.
It certainly it's
The
not.
water protectors, yeah, they got up and stand up for our people. I think that's also why I like reggae music, a lot too. The struggle and that are real and the causes that are said in the music.
From the community. Yeah, absolutely. So, what would you say to the 18 to 22-year-old that's listening to this conversation?
I would say get an instrument. Things that, what I learned too is, like never hawk a guitar, like keep it, and keep on songwriting in that sense. Become truthful to yourself. Honesty is pretty harsh. And, when you become honest with yourself, then it's easy to be honest with other people. And those things are important, like even things like taking care of your health is really important, like in my day, alcohol was a very much part of who we were, but it doesn't have to be. And it shouldn't. Like it shouldn't define us in that sense. We're learning how to be better songwriters, be better business people, be better a musician, be a better brother or sister. Those things are really important. The camaraderie that comes with it. Share, be kind, be helpful and not so competitive and things. And I think those are important, that kindness and self-care and self-love are important. And keep going, keep on doing it. Get yourself an instrument and play.
So what's on the horizon for you? What are you working on now?
Well, like I say, a collection of songs. Like I have like a 24 unreleased songs, a couple albums worth of music, and I'm just deciding how to and when, when I should. Got a manager who's kind of helping me, and we're looking for the best deal out there, maybe a distribution deal or maybe with a small label again. And I got my connections that I made with Don Giovanni. They're still very vital in things, and so I can have major distribution. For me, that was important, is to get your music distributed so people can get to it before. That was a difficulty of being an indie artist, was like we weren't so accessible. And so nowadays with the internet and things, musicians can be more accessible and more be heard and things. So I'm working on those things, and writing songs as they come, and maybe you write 2 or 3 songs a year, and then after a decade you got a whole songs. And so I would say play the long game too. It's important to play the long game in this whole musical career. There's no guarantees in the long game, but it'll make you survive. Like if you lose this concept of colonialism and what is success, and just put your own values and your own things on it, so you don't feel like, oh, I got pressure, I gotta have 1 million streams or 5 million or 1 billion streams, but just to keep on going. And so that's what I've been doing. My new songs they're really audio. They're out there, with harmonies and songs and guitar leads and little riffs that are really important. I always try to write hooks in my music. Not so much trying, but I do write it. Little riffs that people can relate to and sing along. Sing-alongs are important. People that, they'll sing your songs. Yeah, I'll sing you some of those songs what I'm talking about after, Joseph, where you can download it for your people on the podcast, get a little bit of idea of some of the songs that have little riffs and ideas on them.
Where can the listener find your work and connect with you?
Well, Secola.com is my website. I just loaded up, and this was a learning curve, how to edit your own website and work on that. It took me all morning to kind of figure it out, but I uploaded a song called Changing the Vibe. It's on there today. Secola.com is one place. And then there's on that, I have my website. There's where they can be distributed, where it can be listened to, like the other musical places that people listen to music these days. And it's all there. And then, of course, the social media presence. I'm not so good at that, but it's there too. That's at Keith Secola, and then I'm on Instagram and things like that.
All right, we'll put links in the show notes for them to find you. And yeah, for the listener, check out the website. There's links to get those albums. Circle is on there, and a number of others. So yeah, please take time and check that out. Keith, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast and sharing your story.
I appreciate you, and like the listeners who dig a little deeper at looking for music, because that's a really aficionado, and that's where the music starts and the organic music is. It's out there, it's not just that's what's in your face and what's on the TV or the radio. It's a little deeper than that. And so that's also why I appreciate what you're doing, Joseph, and keep on doing it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And that does it for this episode of 5 Plain Questions. I want to thank Keith again for his time and sharing his story with us. Keith Secola has accomplished something that many dream of, and that's being an icon within our pop culture. That song, NDN Kars, is something that hit all of us hard in the 90s and 2000s, and to this day we can all recite the lyrics to that song, and it's just a jam that we all love. And I got to give a shout out to my cousin Eric, former guest of this podcast, Eric Williams, guest of this podcast. saying, hey, you need to get Keith on the podcast. And I was like, absolutely. So I reached out to Keith, and to my surprise, he was down right away for it. And so I'm honored and excited to have shared this with you. And create collaboration is the name of the game for him. He works with everyone. He's a producer for new bands right now. He's out there touring still, and he's creating children's music. And so it's amazing how he just keeps moving forward, and I couldn't be happier for him. That's it. Check out his website. If you want to book him and see what he's doing, go to Secola.com and check him out. So but Keith, thank you for your music, and thank you for your time today. More importantly, I want to thank you for joining us and spending your time listening to what I feel is a very important story and perspective from our community. So please, join us next time as we speak with another incredible person. I'm Joe Williams. Thank you for listening to 5 Plain Questions. Your support keeps these conversations going. You can follow us on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Blue Sky, and stay connected to us visiting the 11warriorarts.com websites. There you can explore past episodes, check out our exclusive merch, and sign up for our upcoming newsletter. Every listen, share, and purchase helps keep this podcast going. Support for this podcast comes from Art of the Rural, working to advance rural culture and equity through collaboration, media, and the arts. Our episodes are produced and edited by Pod for Good. Jesse and the team work tirelessly to create the high-quality episodes that you're listening to right now, removing all of my ums and my quirks. Mostly. This has been an 11 Warrior Arts production.